The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.
Welcome, everyone. We are having another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast, the wrap-up on what was a crazy season. Seems like the regular season flew by, and then felt like the playoffs things kind of slowed down a little bit. But we got the whole crew in here today. We got Evan Wheaton, the new guy, Evan, and we got Dan Sostek and Tom D. Martini and Eric Epler. They were all out at the field all weekend watching our big state championship games. So we wanted to bring them together, talk about the season, and maybe some subjects and things that came up coming out of those big games. But guys, who wants to get us started? It was a heck of a weekend. I thought it was a brutal weekend for some.
Was it a heck of a weekend? I mean,
yeah, I don't think it was. For one game,
like,
it was.
It was to me. I think like
it was a heck of a weekend if you're Aliquippa.
It was a heck of a weekend for 6 football teams. But for neutral football fans, I'd say it was a heck of a Friday afternoon, maybe, because there was one competitive football game. Heck of a weekend too. Like, I guess, like, for me, what the big takeaway is from state championships is that you're watching a lot of guys that are going to be playing in the NFL one day, like just the way it is in Pennsylvania. And so from that perspective, you know, there was a ton of talent at Cumberland Valley this past weekend. Guys like Tyke Hayes, you got guys like Quentin Martin, guys like Samaj Jones, Cam Lindsay, people like that, like just stars all around. But, you know, as our most senior football reporter here would attest, this is probably one of the more lopsided, but not the most lopsided. Like, you get these every now and then, right? Where there just aren't many good games, just the way the brackets shake out. And there's one team that's way better than everyone else in every classification. It felt like it was this year.
I think it was winners 184, losers 85 with your combined scores. Yeah. So it was a pretty, it was like I said, it was a good weekend for 6 teams, maybe 7. Westinghouse played their hearts out. It was a little bit of a heartbreaker. I don't think anything to hang their heads over Southern Columbia. But, initially, we're going to get into the games a little bit. But any other quick takeaways, just broad view from any of you guys before we get into that? Ep, what you got? I know you got something, Ep. You always got something.
Just to kind of continue what Dan was saying too. I mean, I was actually like very much looking forward to some of these matchups. I mean, obviously you had first and foremost, congratulations to Steel High, second straight, 3 out of 4 for Coach Andrew Irby and the Steamrollers. I don't think any of us saw a 42 or 42-8. What was it? Final 42-8 final from them.
Yeah.
But we did all anticipate a victory. And of course, Alex Irby, the quarterback, went out in grand style and really patted those all-time career marks that he now holds. So congratulations to the Rollers. They opened up championship weekend on Thursday afternoon with a big win over Fort Cherry. I was very much looking forward to the 3A championship game with Northwestern Lehigh and Bell Vernon. Bell Vernon proved to be way too much firepower for him. I thought that would be a closer game. And I think we all were sort of intrigued as well by the 6A matchup. Obviously, when you talk about St. Joe's Prep, you talk about the benchmark program in Pennsylvania, especially big school benchmark program. Some of the smaller schools you would talk about with Southern Columbia and things like that. Steel High, of course. But I think we were all very curious on how North Allegheny would sort of handle that dynamic. That's the only way really to put it. Dynamic Hawks team. And it didn't end too well for North Allegheny in that one. So, yeah, we had a lot of lopsided matchups. I was disappointed in the attendance. I thought the attendance would be a little bit better. Northwestern Lehigh really stoked the fire there, too. They brought everyone. When I pulled into the parking lot, there was about 17 tailgates going on. Somebody had a 13-foot high sign. It just said Nation on it. It brought it down from Northwestern Lehigh. So that was a fun atmosphere for them. But again, Bell Vernon was just too much for him. So there were a lot of things. There were a lot of good things about this, about the last 3 days there at Cumberland Valley, but some were a little bit disappointing too, as far as how things ended, and of course the attendance, which we had talked about this earlier, Brian and Dan. I think we saw a general slide in attendance all year long, and not just for the championship weekend.
Well, the numbers being reported, I think it was last year, they had somewhere around 19,000, close to 20,000 attend all 6 games. And this year, the numbers we were seeing, and again, I don't think any of us really verified them, just the numbers floated around were, a little over 10,000 for all 6 games. And I know you guys were out there and you said it did look like the numbers were down. So, I think there's a lot of reasons why that could be, we had 3 really hyper local teams in those state championships last year. Maybe that brought out a little bit more. But I mean, there's probably a number of reasons, but let's just start from the beginning, dive into the 1A game a little bit. Ep, you touched on a couple things there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Alex Irby breaks his 3rd state record, and we talked a lot. He's also got the record for being on our podcast. He's been on our podcast 4 or 5 times now. And look, we talked about this. Look, I like Alex. He's a good kid. Right now, he's going to Navy. I think he's a heck of a talent, and in a state that's produced Dan Marino and Joe Montana and Johnny Unitas. Statistically, he's the GOAT, man. What does that say about the kid? What can we say about this kid?
Well, I mean, it tells you that. I think the takeaway for me is that he's gotten everything out of what he can. But like that kid is a worker. I think the thing that when I was talking to his dad before the game, Andrew Irby Sr., he said like the one thing about Alex is that he is like he's always watching for like his dad has to tell him to quit watching film so much and kind of cut it out and just like be a kid for a little bit, because I think it's pretty obvious that Alex Irby has just always wanted to be that quarterback, right? That guy who's I don't think he has never necessarily set out to set these records, but he definitely set out to win state championships and be that type of quarterback. And I think that he's just a kid that's, earned everything he's had. That, a lot of times you get those coaches' sons, right, where you kind of side eye them a little bit when they're playing quarterback, and you're like, I wonder why they're playing quarterback. That's never been the case with Alex Irby. He's always just kind of worked for everything, and I think his dad's made him work for everything too. So,
I think, Dan, you bring up good points. One of the things I wanted to see what you guys thought about was we look at Alex. He's probably about 6'3", about 210. He's got a pretty good arm. He's got a lot of tools. He's a smart kid. I still don't think he's peaked. I don't think he's as good as he can be. And he's got all these numbers. I think he's working to get there. I think he'll tell you he's not as good as he can be. So that, to me, makes him interesting. Like, I watched Army-Navy, no knock against Navy's quarterback. If he ends up at Navy, he's definitely going to be probably the best passer they've had there, and especially with the offenses they've ran in the past in decades. But I think he's a high upside kid because of his intelligence and his tools. And I don't think we've seen the best of Alex Irby or where it could go with. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I'd like to see him run that triple option offense maybe for a while.
Well, they're getting away from that, Tom. They're getting away from that triple option.
They don't run triple option anymore, Tom.
They still run a little bit of it. It's kind of funny, but they throw it a little bit more now.
The biggest thing about Alex, and obviously he'll be the first to tell you, and all quarterbacks should tell you, they're only as good as the guys around them. And he's been lucky to kind of come up through the system through peewees, ponies, and midgets in Steelton, and play with the same guys like Jayon Perry and Darrell Caesar and these guys who are unbelievable athletes. And, even not on Alex's best day when he's throwing the football, they make him look good. And he knows that, and every quarterback should know that. That said, I think the best part of Alex and the best part of being connected with Navy is the kind of leader that he's grown up to be. I think that's his best asset right now. And you mentioned about the film work. You mentioned about all the things that people don't see typically. But the people in the community know how hard this kid works. And I think the leadership that he's shown is the reason, beyond the athleticism, obviously it's there, but is the reason they've won 3 out of 4 years. I mean, I think he was thrown in the fire as a freshman, and, took him to a state title in that weird COVID year. of 2020 right before it. And I just think that his leadership has been the most impressive part about him. And who knows? I'm sure some other schools will kind of maybe throwing offers his way. I think he'll get some more offers, even though he's committed to Navy. And but I think it's a great spot for him, just based on his personality, type of kid he is. He's smart. He's engaging. He's well ahead of his time in interviews. You guys know, because we've had him on the podcast multiple times. You know the kind of kid he is. So he fits right in to that program and that and obviously that commitment.
I think you're right. And Tom, just to speak real quick about what you were saying, they still have some elements of that option stuff they're running. To me, it looks like if they can get Alex Irby on campus, he's a real keystone to what they're trying to actually go to with their personnel. They want to be able to drop back and throw it a little bit more, I think, and they're sort of trying to evolve from what they were to that. And that's why
they're tired of Army Navy games over under 27.5 points.
He could be a program changing athlete for them.
Yes, he could.
I tell you, another guy real quick I wanted to bring up. I know all of you guys really liked him. Doesn't have a ton of offers, but Darrell Caesar ended up with like almost 100 catch, probably over 100 catches, right? I think he had over 100 catches.
Ep made a really good argument to me. That obviously Alex Irby's probably got to be, the player. If there's a player of the year from Steel High, it's got to be Alex Irby because of all the records and everything he broke. But if you just go pure statistics, and I know Alex Irby broke the touchdown record and everything, but if you go pure statistics on both sides of the ball, you can make a real case there's no one with a more impressive, stat line than Rel Caesar Jr. He's got like close to 2,000 yards. Like around he
had over 2,000 yards offense, I think.
Around 20 touchdowns. I think he had
on offense. Yeah,
and then I think 3 or 4 pick sixes, right? 3 or 4 pick
interceptions total.
Yeah,
certainly a fair amount of interceptions on the defensive side of the ball
total,
too.
So
I mean,
including one in the championship.
Yeah, and that's a storyline that I think was kind of underplayed. That we probably didn't even do as big of a job as we should. Is last year he wasn't on the field for that game, right? Like
Evan wrote that.
Yeah,
Evan wrote it. He had 13 catches for over 180 yards in this state title game.
Yeah, so I think you're right on the money highlighting him. Evan, do you want to talk more about him?
Yeah, I mean, this, he said this one was just personal. He was out with a chip on his shoulder, trying to prove a lot here. He only played a few snaps as a freshman in that first state title game. Obviously they were bounced first round by, I believe it was Canton in year 2. Year 3, he was suspended. And that was a whole saga last year. So, him being suited up for this one, a touchdown, an interception. He had, I think, 147 receiving yards. I mean, he really had a slam dunk state title game to help them propel ahead. And I mean, he was crying afterwards, just tears of joy. It meant a lot for him. It was personal.
3 state titles for that group that came in as freshmen. This is big for that town too. I wanted to bring up one more thing before we move on, guys. Every game seems to have like a storyline coming out of it. If there was anything, a little bit of controversy, I saw some Fort Cherry fans complaining that Andrew Irby left the seniors in late and, still playing. And then they had the, obviously where they called a timeout, they locked arms, they walked off the field. I have a set opinion on leaving your starters in and stuff like that, and the state title game and stuff like that. What did you guys think about that? Did you think it was off base or?
My general take was I didn't love it, but that's kind of that's kind of their prerogative at this point. When you win 3 state titles in 4 years, and you personally only that group really knows how they feel about each other and what they mean to each other and everything. And the thing that I've always said about that Steel High football program is when they say #for the room, they mean they don't care what anyone else says about them. They don't care what anyone else thinks about them. They are operating, for each other. And I think that was a moment for them. Now, what I kind of had an issue with, I don't know if issue is the right word, what I was kind of questioning a little bit was after they all walked off the field, was putting players back in and then not taking a knee. I thought that was a little questionable. Because I get you're trying to get kids some snaps in a state title game, but I think that's a situation where, maybe the other team's kind of angry you did that thing and then are going extra hard when it doesn't need to be, and you can just end the football game. That's where I think, like, if you really, if I had to nitpick, I would say maybe just let the kids take a knee out there, because it's not. But when you win 3 state titles in 4 years, it's really hard to tell you, like, this is how you should handle a specific moment.
You made some good points. Dan, anybody else have any thoughts about like how they played their guys to the end and how that all played out?
I would probably tend to agree with Dan with, at a certain point, maybe kneeing it.
I'm just always going to be against throwing deep when it's a running clock. I don't care. I don't care how much bulletin board material was put up during the week. I'm always going to be against that. I just think it's a bad look for you in that situation. Calling timeout and locking arms with your seniors to come out, I got no problem with that whatsoever. You're using a timeout. You use it however you want. I think that was fine. I agree a little bit with Dan, too, about, bringing in your second team and running plays. But they did run 2 plays and then did take a knee. So I just don't like the downfield looks with a running clock. I just think that's in poor taste no matter what. But again, it's a state championship game. This group has been together so very long. And maybe you're trying to get, your senior TD. I don't know what the reasoning is. But I think all in all, it probably didn't look great on Fort Cherry's part. But again, at that point, the game was in hand, and you do what you want to do. You go out the way you want to go out. So,
Tom, how'd you feel about sort of playing it out?
I have no problem with calling a timeout to take out the starters. What I was a little entertained by was Fort Cherry doing the same thing on the next play, calling a timeout. Yeah. All right, we'll take out our seniors and we'll lock arms too. Kind of made it a little dramatic.
Guys, I thought about it a lot. Honestly, I'm with you through the regular season. I think once you get to a state championship, there's no tomorrow. Some of these guys may never play football again, and you're in a championship game. So to me, state championship, there's nothing else. That's it. So you play it to the end, in my opinion. You play a championship to the end.
But my counter to that is there are also players on the team that are playing football later, and doing stuff like that can lead to dirty football. You know what I mean? That can kind of be the instigator to people maybe playing a little more physical and getting kids hurt. That's one of my big.
You're a sophomore running back, right? It gets put in after they lock arms and they put you in, and then they tell you, and they tell the quarterback, you know what, we're just going to take a knee. I mean, how would you feel? You want to get the handoffs, right? And you've worked and earned your way. And quite frankly, like I said, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. If you're in a state title game, you're in a state title game. So like for Fort Cherry, I think we're beyond the point of you can be embarrassed. It was an ugly score, but you got to a state title game. I just think you play championship games to the end.
But does that one run really? And again, I'm not a football player. I don't know. Maybe it does. Like, this is this is not like me saying it doesn't. This is me genuinely asking. Do you think that one run makes much more of a difference than just seeing the field? Like, to me, I don't. It's still.
I think if you ask any sophomore if they want to get a chance to tote the rock or they want to kneel on it, I think you know what the answer is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, I guess just from an outside, I think it's all just kind of icing on the cake. And
Dan, you wouldn't have took that hand off in there if Irby would have looked at you and said, "Throw on the pads and get in there." You wouldn't have took the hand off.
I would have. Well, I would have housed it. I would have ran 80 yards for scores because I'm that kind of running back. But
we're going to start having you every year run the 40 like Rich Eisen.
Yeah, that would. I'm not sure that Megan's camera has enough memory for how long it would take for me to run a 40-yard dash.
To put a bow on this one, guys, I think you all make good points. I don't think any of you guys are wrong. I just take it as, I think when you get to a title game, I think you play them to the end, and if you want to kneel on it, that's up to you. If you want your guys to get those last snaps and go for the gold, keep pushing it down the field, I think it's fair game. Now, in the regular season, if you're beating a team by 6 touchdowns with 2 minutes left, I have a different probably view on that. But I don't know. I didn't have as big a problem. Some people had a huge problem with it.
Yeah, we should be clear. I don't think any of us were like storming off the field after the game screaming about it. I think
I don't think any of us even brought it up in our meetings. I just know it was a big topic of discussion on the message boards. And we're going to have us probably an hour and a half podcast here, but so I got to keep it moving. Southern Columbia, Westinghouse. I think I'm the only guy on the staff to pick Westinghouse to win. A lot of us picked them to cover, though.
I picked them to lose by 1 point. So
we thought we thought Westinghouse was going to come in fired up, and they did, and really had a chance to win this game. Any quick takeaways from this one? Anything you guys wanted to point out in this one?
I'm usually not a big complaining about officials, but the call on fourth down, the defensive holding call that kept the drive alive for Southern Columbia to get the first down. In a regular season game, okay, you may call that. In a championship game, keep the flag in your pocket.
I was told by a Pittsburgh reporter who took video and is, covering Westinghouse, probably leans, better story for him is Westinghouse. I was told by him that he thought it was a clear flag. He had video of it and thought it was a clear flag. So I was there, so I'm going off what you guys say.
I agree.
I thought it was a penalty, but I think you can make that argument that do you call it then? Mm-hmm. And I even saw a coach say, and I respect, first of all, Dante Green, Westinghouse, tremendous freaking job, man. He's got there 2 years in a row. Yeah. I don't think people understand.
The City League is an impossible league to get.
Yeah, and he's got there 2 years in a row and probably should have won it or had a good chance to win it this year. Heck of a football coach. But I even saw some football coaches saying, should he even have been sort of up on the guy on that play to be in a position to make that foul? I think he did make the foul. I think Tom brings up a good point, though. It's like, did you throw it there? I mean, was he really even looking at the guy? I don't know. But
and I heard Westinghouse
did not. A sack. The actual play was a sack and a fumble recovery.
I heard Westinghouse, to their credit, which I think tells you about the type of coach Dante Green is, nobody on that team blamed the officials for the loss. They said we could have stopped. They started the ball at the one. They had the ball at the 1 yard line, and we couldn't stop them. It has nothing to do with officials. So
bouncing off of that, to me, that call doesn't decide the game. Southern Columbia was also hit with a holding. They went back for back holding calls. It was a penalty. That's just how it is. And then to start on the 1 yard line, 6 minutes with a run heavy offense, you let Garrett Garcia pick up 28 yards on the first play. 2 encroachments on 4th and 8. A quarterback that does not really pass the ball gets an 11-yard completion. At some point, you got to make a play in that situation. And for Southern Columbia to get hit with the same penalty, I don't think that call was. I mean, Westinghouse was awesome all game, and at some point, you just got to make a play.
I saw it the same way as you, Brian. I just thought, in that situation, it's 4th and 18, and you get the call. Was it legit hold? Absolutely. It was legit. It definitely was a flag, but I think 4th and 18 made the situation seem that it was a controversial call. And then you go right back and you get a 4th and 8. They run the same exact play, same exact pattern, and Blake Wise makes this great throw again to pick up the first down. So they had chances. Westinghouse had chances, like Dante Green said, to make a play, and they just couldn't do it. But you're right. I remember a quick story about when I took over doing state rankings, years and years ago. A couple of my go-to guys that I really trust out west said, "Hey, listen, don't rank a District 8 team ever, even on their teams to watch, because they just don't have the firepower. They don't do this." At that point, I think there were 7 and 8 teams. There's only 6 remaining in the district. And but this Westinghouse team, from what they've done to get here 2 years in a row, and really played 2 pretty damn good games. The game last year obviously was a 15-point game, but it was very competitive. So I applaud that program tremendously.
They hung around,
and I'm glad that we made the decision last year to start to move them in earlier, and we took some comments, this team, this and that, and here they are right around again. So congratulations to them for making it.
We're coming up on signing day, and I just want to say 2 really good underrated seniors here. Tamir O'Neal from Westinghouse. I don't think he's got a lot of looks or offers.
He was amazing.
He's a heck of a ball player. And Garrett Garcia ran for 73 yards and had 15 tackles. He had some injury issues. He's one of the, I think they probably had 5 Garcia brothers come through there now. But he's a good ball player, too. So there's some guys there who, as we approach signing day, college coaches, if you're listening, I know you know who these guys are, so check them out. So, guys, I want to bounce it. 3A, the Quips, Aliquippa just beat up on Dallas. And before we even get into it, we haven't done this on the podcast, but I got to say this. Dallas took a butt whipping in this one. But, we just talked about Dante Green. Rich Manello over at Dallas, give him his flowers. I think 3 or 4 years ago, they beat Imhotep. When Imhotep, everybody, I think, expected him to win the state title that year. They were loaded. Dallas somehow, all of us can agree, Dallas has some nice ball players, but they're not the same type of athlete. They beat Imhotep 3 or 4 years ago, and you think, wow, that's a shocker, and it was a shocker at the time. But then they beat Bishop McDevitt to get here. Bishop McDevitt also they got a guy going to Alabama, a wide receiver, and a guy going to Kentucky. I think Rich Manello may have revealed himself to be one of the better coaches in the state of Pennsylvania.
Well, it's interesting too, coming right at a time that the one of the narratives coming from this state championship weekend is that it's not fair for public schools going against these private schools, and then Dallas goes and beats Bishop McDevitt, then loses to a public school by like 40 points. It's an interesting wrinkle.
Yeah, you make a good point. We're going to get into that some too, but
yeah.
And I'll tell you what. Again, you guys know I always say let's talk about the players and not the coaches. But on the other side of this coin, Mike Warfield at Aliquippa, ever since I saw that the first time they beat Bishop McDevitt with that speech he gave, that guy will make you want to run through a brick wall, and he gets the Quips ready to play ball. And they played ball. What did you guys think about this?
Aliquippa is just it's just a special. There aren't, I think if you go across the country, not just Pennsylvania, you go across the country, there are not many football programs like Aliquippa. It goes beyond, the 3 NFL Hall of Famers that went there. There is just like this sort of force in that program, like that. It just kind of it's really just magical to behold when you kind of watch them and everything's going their way, because they're basically a 2A school playing up 4A. They might have to go to 5A. It's like
I said 3A, so I had a brain meltdown and I skipped ahead of class. We'll go back to 3A, but 4A.
Yeah, they're just a special program, and man, that Tyke Hayes, it's a fun debate. Who's the best running back in the state? Who's the best running back committed to Penn State? All these debates. Tyke Hayes was unreal Friday night, just unreal. Like he was a force in Asia. They have Cam Lindsey going to Pitt. They've got John Tracy, their backup running back, would probably run for 2,000 yards. Most other places, Brandon Banks got hurt early.
What about a young kid, Khalil Good, who had the 3 picks and returned 185 yards? Guys?
Yeah, there's people say it all the time, and there's just something in the water at Aliquippa. I know. Jesse Washington from the Undefeated, or I think they called Anscape now, are working on a documentary about Aliquippa. And if there's any program in PA that deserves a documentary, it's probably that program. It's just a really incredible program to watch.
I'd be shocked if they're not back next year. They're going to find some linemen, and they're going to have Tyke Hayes, and they're going to have Mike Warfield getting them ready to run through brick walls for them. Yeah. Impressive program, impressive win. They really handed it to Dallas in this 4A title game, 60-14. Anything? Take anything? You're the vet here, man. You've seen a lot of them.
Yeah, years ago, the knock, sort of the knock on Aliquippa in these sort of championship games where they'd go and they win at Whippeal, and then they'd sort of have a mistake or two that would unravel them. It would just unravel in a semi or even the championship round. This is really first, and I like Coach Warfield, but this is really, even against McDevitt, that first touchdown just sort of shocked Aliquippa last year. That quick hitch to Tyshawn Russell that went for 70-some yards in the first play really shocked them, and they really never recovered. This team was not going to allow that to happen. They were going to set the tone, and it almost felt to me like this was the most precise first 10 plays that I've seen Aliquippa live, and I've seen them a lot live, quite a bit over the years. I used to make a trip out to the Whippeal Championships every year to see them because I knew they were probably going to show up in Hershey 2 weeks later. So this was the most precision offense that I've seen in the early going of a championship game. And, a lot of people have asked me in the hours after Aliquippa's championship on Friday. I got a lot of emails and text messages, people asking me about would McDevitt have beaten this team, and no, they would not have. I'm convinced of that. Not the way they played, not the way they were set up. They were destined to win this. They were ticked off at how they were embarrassed last year against Bishop McDevitt. So I don't think McDevitt would have won that football game against Aliquippa. So, hey, hats off to Dallas. You mentioned it, Brian. Manella did a great job getting them here. He did a great, he was a long-time college coach at Wilkes, for many, many years. And now is in the high school ranks and doing a tremendous job. But this was just a different beast. And Dan mentioned all the studs running around for Aliquippa. And, Tyke Hayes looked phenomenal to me. John Tracy's one of my favorite guys because he's an incredible switchback. You run Tyke Hayes, he's bigger, leaner. The package is a little bit different for him. And then you run Tracy, who just looks like he's running a 6 flat. It's just incredible. So, and Cameron Lindsay's been one of my favorite players for years and years. He seems like he has so much fun playing football and just knocking people out. So, congrats to Aliquippa. It was a great effort, and Dallas had to have a little bit of letdown coming off that big win against McDevitt as well too. It was just sort of the perfect storm for Aliquippa to go nuts and take this one easy.
60-14 sounds bad, but again, this is a rare one where it's like none of us expected Dallas, and pretty much the whole state expected Dallas to beat Bishop McDevitt. No knock against their players. I don't know how they did. That's a mark of a great team, other than the fact that, like I said, Manello has pulled this off now a couple times in the last 4 or 5 years. I can say this. You got a team that's had a really great season and some great ball players. You get to the playoffs, you don't want to see Dallas standing in front of you before the state title game because they obviously can come up with some stuff for you.
Yeah, Tom, didn't you cover the Dallas McDevitt game?
No, I covered McDevitt Manheim Central the week before.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ep, did you think Dallas was going to? Yeah, did you think Dallas was going to put up a better effort against Aliquippa than they did, or not really?
Yeah, I thought they put up a little better effort, but it just, once it started spiraling, there just was nothing Dallas could do. I mean, like I said, you expected a little bit of letdown after that thunderous effort against McDevitt when, again, a lot went wrong for McDevitt, but a lot, the root of a lot of that evil was Dallas and the way they played defensively, the pressure they got on Stone Saunders in that first half. Stone was injured, took a little hit on his leg when he on a block punt that kind of sparked Dallas to come back from a quick. McDevitt ran right down the field on the first series and scored and went up. And they could have went away, but they got tremendous pressure on Stone, and it just threw everything off. And between the special teams breakdowns, McDevitt had 4 of them really in a state semifinal game. You can't do that against a gung ho team. And they had enough running. Zapaticki made enough good clutch throws, and it just they got the overtime win. I mean, as bad as many mistakes as McDevitt made in that semifinal, they still got it to overtime. They still got there to overtime, is exactly what they needed to do. And but they couldn't pull it through. I mean, it was a tremendous effort by Dallas.
I will say that was the 4A championship was the only one that I didn't get to see in person, actually, because I was hot on the Steel High Parade Trail with Joe Hermit and Jimmy Brown, and I got a nice compliment for my driving that night because we were able to beat the buses in their route multiple times and get back there and in a timely manner get some photos in the locker room. So I was a little preoccupied, so I wasn't able to see it.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.
Guys, we're at the 35-minute mark. We're about halfway home. I'm going to rewind it real quick because I skipped right over. I said 3A had a brain meltdown. let's go back to the 3A game because we just talked about the 4A game. Bell Vernon, we talked about them a little bit. They beat up on Northwestern Lehigh 38-7. Watching this game, it was a little bit of a funky game, though, because, like, Northwestern Lehigh got it down to the goal line early. I think they had a turnover. And, like, even though Bell Vernon controlled this game, there were like 2 or 3 instances where Northwestern Lehigh could have been like a 38-21 game or a little bit closer. I felt like they had chances to close the gap where it just kind of narrowly escaped them. Not a bad year for them. Anything you guys take from this game?
You couldn't let other guys besides Quinn and Martin beat you. And Anthony Cruz.
Yeah,
man. He looked awesome. Like, I think he's a junior, right? I'm not sure how many offers he has.
That little cutback on the touchdown.
He'll have some Division I offers after that. Like, that's how, like, you put up that kind of game in a state championship game. College coach is going to be watching that. Quinn and Martin had a big 92-yard run. Besides that, other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? But besides that run, they did kind of do a decent job handling Quinn and Martin. But you can't let other guys beat you. And opening the game up with that kick return, it really just sets the tone. And you're already kind of playing at I don't want to say talent disadvantage, but you are playing a little bit of a talent disadvantage. And you can't let them get off to that start early and let them dictate how the game goes.
I just don't think they played as bad as the score says, right? I mean, they were about a half click off on, like, there were 1 or 2, 3 plays where if it had went just one other way, it's a little bit closer of a game. Bell Vernon still controlled it.
Yeah, to me, I felt like Bell Vernon was in control, but like you said, maybe if you put a little more game pressure on them, things change a little bit.
I think that goal line stop kind of took some wind out of the sails too. I mean, that was a pretty good drive up to that point, and getting stopped, on the 1 yard line. That's to cut this thing out a bit. Anthony Cruz opens up with a kick return touchdown. Another one on an offensive drive right after. It's a quick 14-0 within just the first 3 or 4 minutes. And then, you march back downfield. You think you're going to kind of make a response to that quick start, and to be stuffed at the goal line there. I mean, it was just a lot of control early on from that start there.
The play calling on that goal line stand offensively, when you get to 3rd and goal and you've got 3 straight shots in the middle and you didn't get it, you think you might try to run a counter or a little flip pass out to the in the flat instead of trying to get stuffed again. I thought the play calling there was a little suspect.
Let's bounce it real quick to 5A guys. Imhotep. I talked to Devin Johnson before the season. He was well aware that people were very pleased to see Imhotep get there and not, cash in a couple years in a row. Them being a charter school, and kind of gets into the bigger debate we'll talk about in a minute about these public charter schools. But they get there and they cash in, they dominate. I think a key in this season for Imhotep was Mikal Davis's improvement at quarterback. Yep. He's an Army commit. He's a much better passer, but he can run it. He became a more dynamic player. I think he really probably worked hard to get there. And then they had a bunch of different weapons. And Jasir Whittington was a monster in the middle for him. Kenny Wosley was really good. What did you guys take from this? And Imhotep finally breaking through again and winning a state title, knocking off Peters Township 38-13.
Kenneth Wosley, I spoke with him after the game. Penn State commit. He, like you said, he said that he saw all the social media stuff about how Imhotep blows it all the time, and all the choking and whatnot, the 1-6 record against Whippeal and whatnot. He said, I think one of my favorite quotes from the weekend was that, he's so happy he could cry, but he can't right now. He'll cry later. And so, those guys were happy. They had a lot to prove, getting to that point so many times and playing in that game and, coming up short and getting it done this time. It meant a lot for them.
Yep, you've seen a lot of TEP over the last couple of years. What did you think about this version?
Yeah, 2 things. These guys were really playing with a chip. I mean, we heard, at least I heard all year long about how they're so focused. They look, they gelled better, And again, you talked about Mikal Davis Jr. as well. I've seen him play a lot, and it was almost, I don't want to say it was a lack of confidence, but it was almost like sort of foregoing his position to get it to those guys and to kind of make plays. And that was It almost seemed like there was just a small lack of confidence in him, and you saw none of that in the championship game. I mean, he commanded that offense. He made some really, really nice throws, and he trusted it. I think that was the biggest thing. He trusted his abilities, and he was the player of the game. Now, you mentioned some other players too. I thought Whittington was awesome in the middle. I forget their fullback's name, but he was tremendous in this game too, breaking holes. it just seemed like they were destined to get here. I mean, they were they were preseason number one, and I just felt like when the Whippeal had basically 5A teams, that any one of them probably could have showed up here. Between Penn Hills and Pine Richland, Upper St. Clair, you had, of course, Peters Township. Moon was a team that everybody was talking about. So you probably could have had one of 5 teams from the Whippeal emerge. Peters Township was the most consistent and obviously the strongest. And they played a lot like the Pine Richland of last year. So, give Imhotep all the credit in the world. I mean, this was their coming out. We're not going to take 1-6 in championship games anymore. We're going to start this rise, and I don't know. I don't see them slowing down anytime soon, to be honest with you. I know they're going to lose some studs, but man, that was a good football squad, and they were together. They played together. Not a lot of big mistakes, and tremendous effort.
Mikel Davis had 265 total yards and 4 touchdowns. If you'd asked me before the season, I would have told you this guy was safety or an athlete. And now I'm telling you, I'm excited to see him play maybe in an Army-Navy game with him playing quarterback versus Alex Irby. I think he's a really good ball player. So,
yep.
Anybody else, before we bounce to 6A real quick, anybody else got anything on this one? Jabri Wallace-Coleman, guys, 215 yards.
Wasn't he wearing the Georgia logo and
a Georgia logo on the back of his helmet?
I liked when he saw me from 83 yards away and ran right up to me in the end zone and wanted to say hi to my camera.
But I mean, I just think the wearing the Georgia logo, which I think people did not like, some people didn't like to begin with. They thought that was a little odd. And then decommitting, which I think it's probably a little bit of politics with their running back coach leaving. But that was let's just say, I think he had a pretty busy week. A pretty busy weekend.
James Franklin landed the helicopter to come watch him, though. So maybe
they have too many running backs. They can't take all these running backs, can they? They're not going to keep anyone happy.
They might run. Let's just run the wishbone. I mean, look, we got no receivers, so let's put Boperville in there. He's pretty quick, and let's run the wishbone with Nick Singleton and all these guys next year or the year after.
Yeah, make the whole plane out of running backs.
6A title game. Let's move on real quick, guys. St. Joe's Prep cuts through North Allegheny like a buzzsaw. And North Allegheny, Art Walker's team, scrappy bunch, nothing to be ashamed of. They get there. But now we run into the same discussion we have every year. Look, we have to cover teams on both sides of the argument, public and private, and charter too, and how this goes. But it obviously, after St. Joe's Prep wins another one pretty easily against what was a good North Allegheny team, final being 45-23 in a 6A game. We got this discussion. Is the current setup of all of this fair? How private schools are able to operate versus how public schools. How are we feeling about that?
What's the solution? Like, my question to you is just like, it's St. Joe's Prep and like schools like them, they are at least theoretically following the rules. They've figured out loopholes, and good for them. If there are rules that you can find ways around, that's not cheating. And I just think no matter what rule set you create, there's gonna be there's no way to iron this out. I get the counters to it, that it really isn't that it's not good for the sport. But it is the highest classification. It's not like they're a team that's refusing to move up a classification or anything. They're the biggest classification in the sport. It just, to me, it's like, it is a problem, but it's one that I like. Maybe there are people smarter than me that can figure out how to fix it, but this is an issue not just at the high school level, not just in football. It's in every sport, at the NCAA level too. It's any sport without any sort of like salary cap or guidelines. They're the haves and the have-nots, and sometimes that's what makes sports great. Is right. It's like having sort of a Goliath to try and topple. It's been proven to be possible. I don't think it's an impossible task. Is the other thing, but yeah.
What do you guys think? Dan brings up good points. What do you guys think about this? Because this has been this is going to continue to be a big topic.
I think the age-old, publics versus privates is one that, regardless of where anyone stands, I don't see any clear solution where everyone's happy anytime soon. That's kind of my end all. Whatever side of the debate you're on, I just don't see any stoppage in talking about it for the foreseeable future.
Well, no, you have to play the hand you're dealt. We know the situation. There's no way that the powers that be want to split this up, or there will be litigation. Nobody can handle that on either side. So you're forced to play under these rules, and so be it. I mean, again, I keep going back to the fact that if whatever side of the fence you land on, you're still playing against 16, 17, or 18-year-old kids. I keep coming back to that. And granted, there have been kids that have played football for other public schools that don't live in the system, don't live in the school district. It's happened a lot before, all over the state. It's happened in other states. So this is the hand you're dealt. You have to play them. I mean, nobody griped when Mount Lebanon beat them in 2021, and it happened before too. 3 years earlier. So I just, again, you have to. I think there's a legit argument on both sides, and until something changes, until it goes, this is how we have to pursue it. You've got to play the team in front of you, just like the regular season, just like it goes. I mean, it's how it is.
Tom, you got any thoughts on this one?
I have to agree with both Evan and Eric. This is the way it's going to be, and it's not going to change anytime soon. Would I like to see a setup like it is in New Jersey? Of course, with the two parochial sections set aside for public and private schools. But that's not going to happen here very soon, in the near future. So as Ep said, it's going to be, this is what you're dealt, and this is how we're going to have to deal with it.
Look at our setup. If you look at how Pennsylvania is set up too, who do you put in that 6A private? What's that going to look like? Do you add it? Do you do a super class and include the 5A privates as well? What's that going to give you? 6, 7 schools? So how do you run that? It's just we're not laid out perfectly. The state's not laid out perfectly. The east, west is not laid out perfectly. It's why you have these bye weeks when districts are running 16 teams. The WIPIA runs 16 teams out in single A playoffs. What do we run out? 2. We have 2 playing a championship game because we only have 3 single A schools in District 3. Well, out west they've got 30. So, we're just not laid out for it.
Yeah. And again, I think the important point is that it's just a weird discussion to me because of something upset. Like, they lost a couple of years. Like, it's not an impossible, like, Mount Lebanon's a public school in Pittsburgh, and I get it. They're going to be the favorites every year, and it's maybe not fun to kind of have a season like we did this year where you pretty much know from week 4 you're playing for second place in 6A. Now, next year, if Emotep Charter goes up to 6A, there's a little bit more intrigue because I think Emotep's going to be able to at least rival some of St. Joe's Prep talent, especially when St. Joe's Prep graduates some people. But like, it's still a Goliath that you can topple. It's not this unbeatable, they've won every year for 20 years type thing.
So I've thought a lot about this, guys. I sat back and watched everybody argue, and we did a story about this a couple years ago. We kind of crunched the numbers on the competitive balance, everything. Here's where I am with it. People debate, who won this, how many public schools won the state championships. All that, to me, is really irrelevant. To me, the only question that matters in this debate is this. are all of the schools who are playing for the same trophy operating and beginning with the same baseline set of rules and circumstances? And if they're not, if the answer is yes, then there's really no debate. But if the answer is no, then even if public schools won 75 in a row, on the 76th time, the private school that had that unfair, they didn't have that same starting baseline and took advantage of it, that 76th time, there's a group of kids who unfairly were taken advantage of. And it wasn't their fault. It's the adults in the room making decisions. And I'm talking about the PIAA, who famously makes no decisions that matter to anybody at any time, and the politicians who stand behind them. So if we're operating from that baseline where one school has some things it can take advantage of that the others can't, if the answer is yes, that exists, then we really have a delegitimized system. If the answer is they're all starting on equal footing, then it's fair and there's nothing to talk about. It doesn't matter. That's where I'm at with it. But if you have a system that starts out where not everybody has the same starting, it's really not legitimate.
Because we were like talking about this, right? And it is crazy when you go through St. Joe's Prep roster, right? Like Isaiah West, their running back, I think, what did he have? How many carries did he have in the state championship game? Like 3 or 4. That kid's going to be going high Division I. And it's almost at a time you kind of wonder how they even manage that as coaches, kind of balancing act, like all these high, like. And we were talking about all-state stuff with Washington at wide receiver. He doesn't even have, like, his numbers aren't even close to as good as some of the other top ones. But you'd be hard pressed to find a more talented wide receiver in the state than him. It's just they have so much talent that it's almost like funny.
And to be clear, as far as we know, as journalists, they're not cheating.
No.
They're going by the rules that are in place.
It's a cycle, right? Because parents want to send their kids there because they get them to college.
So the question, all of these debates about how many times public schools win and private schools win, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is, are they starting from the same starting point in the rules and how they can operate? If they are, we have no debate. It is what it is. And these public schools, if the answer is no, though, they don't start from the same starting points, then it's not a legitimate system. And yes, these schools are still going to have to play them. But that's a shame on you and the adults, the politicians, and the PIAA for not creating an equal system. And I'm not saying whether one's right or one's wrong here, what the correct answer is. I think we have to look at that some more. But I legitimately saw some people in the argument saying, you guys are just mad because St. Joe's Preps takes advantage of the rules better or whatever in front of them. And if they can take advantage of something that another school can't, we it's like saying, we got 25 teams in the NFL are going to have a salary cap, and these other teams can spend all the money they want. It's not an equal footing. So that's the question. To me, that's the only thing that matters in the debate. And it's one I think we need to get answered.
Yep.
Right? Because the 76th time, and it happened in 76 times, the one team who goes up against the team, if they had a little bit of a starting point or starting advantage and they beat them, you might have a once-in-a-generation team, from a small town, lose out on an opportunity. So we need to get that figured out in Pennsylvania. I think that's a big talking point.
Yeah, to me, the bigger issues are when you're playing down classifications and doing it. Like, that's when you're getting around, like, the formulas, when you're kind of gaming the formulas to stay down classifications, when you have 100-man rosters and things like that. And, you have 50 more players than the teams you're playing against. And you're just kind of, I think there's a handful of schools that do that. St. Joe's Prep, they're playing 6A. It's really hard to criticize them too much. They're playing the toughest competition that they should.
I love those kids, man. I love watching them play.
Yep.
I think it just ultimately comes down to, is it fair to the Harrisburg team with 30 players that finally scrapped there are they starting at the same point St. Joe's Prep starting?
Yeah, my point is just that it's weird to me that St. Joe's Prep is the poster boy for this when they're the ones that are at least theoretically playing against the other big boys. Like they're the ones that are going against the big boys, and there are other schools that do this that are accused of stuff like this that are also accused of gaming, transfer numbers and things like that too. That that kind of seems a little more dicey. St. Joe's Prep goes against the big boys every year, so I give them credit at least in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is here, guys. I honestly don't know. I think Bob Lombardi in the past has argued that they are starting at the same starting point. I'm not sure that's the case, but I'm not sure it is either.
But yeah, from the PIAA perspective, how can they say they're not, right? Like it's really hard to accuse them of anything without getting, as Ep said, without literally getting into like litigation and things like that.
Well, if they're not, shame on the PIAA.
Yeah.
Shame on the politicians that are standing behind them, and shame on the people who want to have litigation. Yeah. Because if they're not, then really taking something away from other kids. If they are, we have no discussion. I think that's the thing we need to figure out probably in the next couple of years here in Pennsylvania. But it's something people have been going round and round about. I've been here 7 years. Epler's been doing it 26, and I bet they've been going round and round about it for a good portion of that too.
I've always said it's a bigger deal for basketball to me.
Basketball is glaring.
Yeah.
It really is a basketball issue. I mean, St. Joe's Prep is sort of the, priority in football. I mean, no one's getting on.
Don't tell that to Art Walker, though.
No, well, no, but I mean, I understand. Listen,
don't tell that to Art Walker,
when you're in that situation, you're going to fight for your team. I think it was sort of a tactical mistake to say something like that 5 minutes after you won a semifinal. Probably, I would think, yeah, because he's sort of building in as kind of an excuse. But again, I can't. I'm not. Those are not my guys. You know what I mean? And you want to protect your guys and do right by your guys. So I never fault a coach for going that route or saying something like that. When we talked about Rich Manello after the semifinal, he said a community team beat a roster tonight, as a poke to Bishop McDevitt. I don't hold a grudge against Rich Manello for saying that. I get it. It's just
he said that against Emotep too.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. Great. Those are his guys, man. I mean, and they worked their tail off just like everybody else, and they pulled off a shocker. Whether they believe it was a shocker or not, it was a shocker. I mean, five of my preseason number ones were Cumberland Valley winning titles. The only one who wasn't there, Bishop McDevitt. So, good for them.
Florida's going. I came from Daytona Beach. Florida's going through a lot of this right now too, where I know like mainly the team I just won. They won the 3S title, which was suburban. So they had a suburban conferences and metro conferences. I think they were sort of trying to get to where the teams from Miami would just dominate everybody every year, and they were trying to make it, I think, a little bit more equitable. They've now moving back away from that system after 2 years. They're trying to figure things out too. I think we're going to see South Carolina where I'm from is starting to see a little bit more of this. They're starting to get a few charter schools there. Now, South Carolina, the publics and privates play separately, and it works swimmingly. It's fine. So I don't know what I don't know what the answer is here, guys. But if there is that inequity on the baseline starting points for these teams, just saying we don't know what the answer is, PIAA is not the answer. You know what I'm saying? Because you're going to keep getting kids who are going to have maybe legitimate rights if that's the case. But anyway, look, guys, we're at 1 hour for this podcast. So I say let's wrap it up real quick. It's basketball season now, but it's football season year round at PennLive. So we're going to be on here every week. You're going to see Eric Epler. You're going to see Dan Stoss. You're going to see me. Tom's going to be on here. Tom is going to be handling wrestling. Evan's going to be on here a little bit. We're into basketball season. Excited about that. We're watching J.J. Kelly throw down dunks for Chambersburg and wishing he still played football at 6'5" for, playing wide receiver. We can only dream, J.J. any other thoughts as we wrap up this football season, the regular season, before we move into the all season? That signing day coming up next week.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think just it was a fun year, especially the mid-pen for me was fun because there were a lot of kids that I think really elevated their programs, like that were super important in their programs. We talked about Marcus Quaker a lot. Talked about Alex Irby a lot. And even going to people like Camp Hill and guys like Drew Brandstetter, just a lot of kids in this area that kind of squeezed everything out of, programs that either needed some life, and then I thought it was a cool year to see some teams emerge in that regard.
Ian Gilling got an offer.
Yeah, from
St. Francis.
Yeah, there he goes.
Let me piggyback on that, Dan. I want to mention Angel Cabrera at Hershey. I think that program was much needed of an infusion. I think he brought it to him there. Obviously, some other guys too, but good for Hershey. Keith Otis, we talked a lot about all year at East Pennsboro. They've gone through some tough years, and not just on the field. So I think to kind of elevate that Panther program was good for the mid-pen. And we've seen a couple other guys as well, but those are two guys I think deserve some last football podcast of the season-ish recognition for doing a heck of a job for those two programs.
Evan, you came on late. You saw Matt Zollers, though. We'll talk about him in the offseason. We're going to get him on here. He's a baller.
Yes, he is.
I will say this, guys. I've gotten a lot of you guys who listen to the podcast reaching out to me, and I agree with you. The numbers, the original reports were that Eric Epler won to pick them. I am not conceding. I'm actually going to have a forensic team look into the addition of the wins and losses. I will say, I think, we made it to the postseason, and I do think I went 6-0 against the spread. So if we're doing this like NCAA tournament style, I'm just going to go ahead and probably claim a title, at least a postseason championship.
I'm not sure that's how it works.
Not much we know is a fact, but we'll have the forensic auditors, the cyber ninjas, come in and look at the final outcomes of the pick'em.
You're gonna have your spray tan dripping down your head with how at your press conference.
Well, I at the very least I appreciate the acknowledgement of a third straight pick'em championship. So that's mighty big of you, boss. I appreciate it.
I also debate whether or not this was an actual third straight title. I think I won one of those in there too. There's a lot of funky numbers. I think we're gonna hire an outside. We might have machines do the tabulations next year and the additions of our pick'em results.
I guess my closing remarks would be that Drew Brandstetter and Matt Zollers have to be objectively tied for coolest nicknames between the Dragon Slayer and the God of Lightning.
Yeah, the God of Lightning is a credit to Tyrese Smith, who's graduating this Saturday, intern of ours. Big ups, Tyrese. I don't think I ever told Tyrese, spring forward rolls into Cumberland Valley, hangs 63 on them, and a game that ends with 9 minutes left because of rain and lightning. And Tyrese Smith, our former intern and freelancer, refers to Matt Zollers as the God of Lightning in his story, and I couldn't take that out. That may have been the best line written into a story this year, so I give him that.
Hope it sticks.
Yes.
Both of them.
Yeah.
One final point on the pick'em, because I cannot let this go, is the built-in advantage that Epler has of coming up with these lines, and I don't even want to know where he gets them from. I mean, I don't want to know where he gets them from, but there is an advantage there that he comes up with the line. That's all I'm saying.
This is some coping. Coping.
Master puppeteer.
There's a proprietary algorithm.
If we're doing it tournament style, I won.
We're not there
If
yet.
we're doing it tournament style, I'm like Joe Montana. I was perfect.
Epler is an acronym.
I cannot divulge what algorithm I use. I got a direct line to Vegas.
It's offshore.
Evan, you're going to be in it next year. Evan's going to be in it next year, so get ready, Evan, because we're going to reform this whole system. Okay, we're going to do away the machines. We're going to have paper counts.
Our ballots.
The night of the games.
It's all public.
And,
it's all in print.
We're gonna come up with the totals on Friday, not Sunday.
Hey, we don't sneak around with picks, man. Everything's got our name on it.
The pick'ems.
It's all there.
Hey, listen, at Sports by B Linder on X or Twitter or whatever you call it. Evan Wheaton, how can you find you on social media?
Oh, I like to keep it simple. It's just my name, Evan Wheaton.
All right, Dan Sostek, tell them one more time how to find you on social media.
Dan_Sostek. You can find me tweeting about how Tino Sinceri is now an offensive coordinator.
Tom DiMartini, tell them how to find you.
At Tom DiMartini, the number 1.
Eric Epler, tell them how to find you.
At 3Jacker, PHREE.
Follow along with us. Like I said, football season never ends. We got our producer Megan's popping up on the screen. She's ready for us to go home with it, as they say in professional wrestling. PennLive.com. Follow us. Stay tuned. We'll be back next week. Talk a little bit of signing day. So, till then, see you guys later.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.